Good evening, folks. Just wanted to take a moment, introduce myself. I'm Lee, former firefighter and U.S. Army veteran. Did 8 years with the Medical and Signal Corps, and I just wanted to go over the Baofeng UV5R MK4 radio that I just received, and to kind of go over some of the basics of how to at least get it up and going to where you can listen to radio traffic in your area. So that way, you're not sitting there like, okay, I push these buttons and they beep at me and they do these weird things and all this. I've had mine for the last 24 hours and I've actually programmed it to the Montgomery County Fire Service dispatch channel, and to basically use that to help drain the battery, because some people say, yeah, I've turned it on, left it on for 3 days, and all of a sudden it finally died. But that was because there's no, it wasn't getting that battery wasn't getting the exercise to drain down, and you need to drain it down. And don't drain it down by keying it up and holding it until it just goes dead. That's not the way to do that, because it'll mess up the battery conditioning. So you want it to drain on its own. So when you find a frequency that's pretty active, when you first get this radio, go ahead and let it drain down, so then that way you can put it on the charger. Do not take it immediately when you get it out of the box and just put it into the charger and try to charge it to full capacity and run it down that way. It messes up the conditioning of the battery, because most things should have a small amount of battery power in them, just to be able to do a function check on the radio to make sure it's working, and then maybe a little programming, and then basically let it run down, charge it up, and then go from there. So today we're going to go over this radio, so that way you have an understanding of what the radio is going to do and how to do it, and you'll even get to hear some fire traffic of a dispatch that went out while I was doing the video. So at this point I'm going to go over the basics of the radio. So I'm going to go ahead and flip my screen here. Okay, so this is my little mock-up dry erase board here that I'm using to describe everything. So as you can see, this is the Baofeng UV5R MK4, with an output power of 8 watts, and it operates, let's see if I can turn this just a little. There we go. It operates on the VHF very high frequency of 136 to 174 megahertz, and also on the UHF side of 400 to 520 megahertz. Now those are the communicating, these are the transmit frequencies, so you can transmit and receive on these frequencies. Now, quick safety note, I would not do that unless you know which frequencies you're allowed to do those on without a license. There are the FRS frequencies that you can do that with, and the fact that there's GRMS frequencies that you need to have a license for, which is like $70, and it's not too hard to get them, but it's just making sure you fill out the paperwork correctly to the FCC. And as far as the MERS, the same thing. I think there's a different form and application you have to do to be able to transmit on those frequencies, but we'll go over more of those frequencies later, and which ones that you can listen to and not affect operations, kind of like this 136, that's in the aircraft range. You interfere with that, you're looking at the FCC coming and having a talk with you. As well as that, if there is an aircraft crash and there's been a monitoring those channels and they heard something that could have possibly affected that aircraft, yeah, they're going to come and find out where that radio signal came from. So be very careful. If you want to listen and kind of get the gist of what's all going on those networks, so that way you have an understanding of what frequencies are the ones you need to pay attention to, say when SHTF situation occurs. To give you an understanding of what this VHF and UHF is, here in the bottom left you have VHF. It's a very high frequency. These are the frequencies that go long range, typically like aircraft, fire departments, EMS, police. They can travel, these frequencies can travel on a good range, with 100 watt mobile radio in a vehicle. You can almost get to 60 miles with those, and they'll penetrate the foliage and trees and obstacles like buildings and all. Whereas the UHF, which is the ultra high frequency, it's more of a short range. You're going to see these applied in very confined areas. Some of the emergency services in the East Coast and the mountain ranges use this frequency range due to the fact of the compactness, and they're bouncing off of the mountains. As well as you can see, put the example of Office Depot, Best Buy, they use those type of radios to communicate inside the store because it keeps those frequencies contained inside. So it's easier to talk on the UHF inside of a building than it is a VHF, and it's easier to talk to somebody with VHF outside of a building than inside. So these are the things that, to give you a basic understanding to get started with. This is what we're looking at right now, and then from there, as we go through, we're going to go over more of the characteristics of the frequencies and how they propagate and basically navigate the ground and terrain, so that way which radio is the best, or what frequency is the best to use when you're wanting to do different communications. As I was speaking with somebody the other night, they were like, oh, well, I can get my CB to talk to these guys over here on the UHF. Well, you could do that, but there's the problem. The CB is on the very far end spectrum, in like around the 20 to 30 megahertz range of the UHF AM side. These here are FM. So they're not compatible. It's like, as everybody knows, you listen to the FM dial on your radio in your car to listen to country, rock and roll, easy listening, or some sports channels. Whereas on the AM side, you'll get a lot more talk radio, odd and end type radio stations that are just short range and just don't go very far. So you got to know which radio system you've got to know what you can and cannot do with them, or you're going to run into more problems. So that's why having an understanding and working with, say, the Aries networks to know what is the best radio to get, what is the best radio to use, and how to use it. That's where we come in. And for like this radio, for the Baofeng UV5R, it's perfect for where you just need to get that quick communication to and from. You should be able to communicate effectively within the area. And if you're working in groups, this is really good for group networking, to be able to communicate with each other in a small area, and you can have multiple people set up to communicate on a prescribed frequency if you want. But again, it's making sure you know which frequency you can operate on and which ones you can't. Okay, folks, so we're here with the radio, and we're going to turn it on.
Frequency mode.
And it's in the frequency mode. And so just to give you guys an understanding here, this frequency here at the top, which I'm pointing to, the 158.820, that's your VHF channel. That's your very high frequency channel. And then the bottom number here, the 442.700, that is your UHF frequency, due to the fact that which is ultra high frequency. This radio is a dual band radio, so you can transmit and receive in the VHF mode, as well as you can transmit and receive in the UHF mode. You cannot transmit from VHF to UHF on this radio. You can monitor and communicate on that frequency, but you cannot deviate, or you can't cross over between the two. With this radio, and if we have any interruptions, I'll let you listen into the fire broadcast on the VHF. But I'm going to kind of push this up a little bit to this AB button right here. If you notice on this screen right here, you see this little arrow that's sitting next to the VHF frequency right here. When you press this AB button, it's going to take it down to the bottom. It will take it, now it's switched from the VHF frequency to the UHF frequency. So now anything that keys up on this frequency here, you're going to be able to hear it, as well as if you were to key up on it, you'd be able to broadcast across this frequency here. So that let you know how, if you're doing the frequency mode.
With other units.
Okay.
Medical call 33122 Highway 249, Puente Para Cristo, Cross Street, Pinedale Circle, and Lazywood Lane. Map 247 Romeo. Fire map 4673 Bravo 3. Respond on FD3.
Okay, so some department or unit's been dispatched to FM 249 over in West Montgomery County. So with that, you use this button, this AB button, to switch between the two bands. So that way you can switch between the two. So if you need to switch back to VHF to talk to somebody on VHF, or you need to switch to UHF, you'd use that AB button to do that. Now, one of the other things about this radio, you can program this by either a computer or by direct key entry. And by direct key entry, which I'm going to see if I can turn the radio here to where you can see the screen. What we're going to do is pull up a frequency that I have for another group. Okay, so we're going to enter in the Galaxy FBO over at the Conroe Airport. So what we're going to do is enter in
1 3 0 5 2 5.
Okay. This is what we call the direct entry or field programmable mode. So at this point, and the same thing can be done with the UHF. If you know the frequency, you can plug that frequency in and be able to either listen in or transmit across that frequency if you needed to. So this is just a quick tutorial to show you the difference between the VHF, UHF, and then how to direct program the radio to be able to at least listen into a channel to where you can at least monitor what's going on in the area. I will show more on frequency locations to help people program their radios. And then also later, as soon as I get my software, I'll help with being able to program the complete radio. Another feature on this, just a quick deal. If you kind of see this orange button up here, the call button, if you press it, it'll take it to this FM mode, and and you can actually kind of push through and see the different frequencies on it. Let's see if we can get it up here to and as you can see, you can take that off of there. As you can see, you can actually listen into the FM radio system that you would in your car. So another feature to where when you're in an emergency situation and power's out and you need to know what the fire department or what emergency services are relaying out through the radio stations, you could tune into your local radio station and monitor local events that are going on. So that's just a quick snippet of this section of the radio. Alright, so that pretty much sums up of how the radio works and how you can at least do the field programming to get it started. Here in a little bit I will try to do another video and show you how to look up frequencies for your area, especially for the what they call the ARIES, the Alpha Romeo Echo Sierra groups that can help with getting ham licenses, as well as the ability to listen in on other repeaters and networks in the area. So stand by for some of these videos because I'm going to try to break them down and make it sensible for the layman to understand, or the common man to understand how these radios work, because what I see in a lot of these user manuals and all, they already expect that you already know what to do with this radio, and so they're just kind of touching the highlights of getting you going, but not enough to really tell you what you need to do. So we're going to go over this, plus I'm also going to go over some of the different things about the UHF and VHF formats. So just stand by for those. I'll get back on those. So every few days I'm going to be trying to put up at least a video to where I can point out some different things to give you guys a better understanding of what's going on in the radio world. So that way you're not too lost and know where to go to. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. As most of the YouTubers say, click the subscribe button down below or up above if you're on the mobile. And, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm here to try to help everybody out. And, there'll be some more surprises coming on down along the way here. So this is just the first of very many to come along this way. So stick around, and as we said in the Boy Scouts, be prepared, and as well as in the Army, that we'd always went with the mantra of pray for peace and train for war. So stay tuned.